Hey guys, welcome back to another video in this channel. Today we're going to continue with the shield. This is one of the concepts that we chose, I chose last week, and I'm going to show you a couple of techniques that I think are going to be really helpful for the weapon that you can design for the contest that we are having. If you have not heard about the contest, make sure to check the videos. Should be like over there probably. Last week, I believe it was on Wednesday, we announced the contest with the rules and everything. There's going to be an update there. Actually, I want to mention this. I'm going to be sharing a site that guys are going to be using to submit the files instead of the Google Drive folder. We're again just like on the go trying to figure out things. So thank you for your patience. But don't worry, we're going to make sure this is as fair and as easy for everyone to participate as possible. So yeah, that's pretty much it. They changed my OBS. It now has a different setup. I updated recently. So let me just make sure that we have everything set up properly. There we go. Okay, so today we're going to be taking a look at the main panels. I think those are a really interesting thing that we can work with. And there's the first thing I'm seeing here. Of course, we had this blocking that we used last time. And the blockings are really important. I'm going to explain why, because I know a lot of you are like, why are we bothering spending a couple of minutes doing this very ugly blockings when we're going to be replacing them with the proper models? Well, sometimes in production, imagine someone's already working on the physics or the programming side of things in the game or in a commercial or something, and you just want to throw this towards them so that they can start playing with some shots. As long as you know you're going to be really close to what we have right here, I can already send this to a rigger, to an animator, for instance, and they can start animating pieces and then later on replace them with the final pieces that I'm going to be sharing. And that way we can speed up the process. A lot of people think that the 3D process is very linear. It's actually more like this huge mess of things that are going all at the same time. So yeah, sometimes an animator is going to be working with a really ugly blocking of a character or of a weapon, and then it's going to be replaced by the proper weapon or proper character. Sometimes riggers are working with the high polys, just getting the skeleton and the curves and everything done, and then they replace it with the proper low poly to skin it and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things going in. The reason why that happens is, of course, time is of the essence. Time is money. So the faster you can be, the more you can advance. Well, as long as everyone's working on something, then the project's going to be moving along. You don't want to have an animator just sitting on their computer browsing Reddit until they get the proper rig or something. So yeah, this is the one. Let's go to the front view right here. I'm actually going to hide this one for now. And we're going to use a very similar process. Now, this one is actually quite fun because it has a very clean edge loop. We are seeing it slightly to the side. So that means that I'm going to have to the proper word would be compensate for that curvature, because there's a little bit of perspective. So we know when you see a cube straight down, the face that's going to be on the front is going to be certain width, and if you move the cube like this, then this face is going to appear narrower, but in reality when you bring it back to the front side, it's going to be a little bit bigger. So this guy right here, this is a gray part right here, is a cube that we're seeing through the side, right? So when we move this to the front, I would expect this to be a little bit wider, probably as wide as this thing is right here. So I'm going to go to Mesh Tools. I'm going to use my Create Polygon tool to create one polygon. And I usually like to start on the corners like this. You can press Shift to keep these things as straight as possible. If they're not straight, you can just select the vertices and scale them so they're, again, as straight as possible. In this case, I am going to go really clean on the execution. Sometimes I rush things, but in this case, we're going to, again, keep it clean. So, let's now that we have this object right here, we're gonna go into our quadro tool, this one right here, and we're just gonna start drawing some squares. So that's one. This will be the corner. I do want to keep this corner like this because eventually I might add a couple of edge loops there to support it. And here's one of the tricky parts, right? We know this is curved, but again, due to the perspective and stuff, I'm not sure how curved it's supposed to be. We're gonna go all the way here, and we're gonna add just 2 lines for now. Just clean this up a little bit. Let's go here, here, and once we get to this side, again, we're seeing this border of the shield in sort of perspective. So I'm gonna try to keep this in the same sort of width that we had before. Let's go all the way down here, here, here. Here, this is a curvature, so we're gonna add a couple of divisions here. Oop. There we go, and finally this one's right here. There we go. Now, before I start playing around with the inner pattern, which is gonna be looped into this edge that we have right here, I do want to clean up some of this area. So, for instance, I'm gonna go to this outer vertices, and with my R key, I'm gonna scale them. so that they all share, like they're completely straight. The curves, that's fine. I can like kind of like measure how clean or not we want them. Let's make sure these guys are really straight. For instance, this guy, see how this is like a really straight line? One thing you can do is you can snap them and then rotate them. Okay, and that way I'm gonna make sure that those are completely straight. Like that line right there, I know it's completely straight. Now, of course, this guys, we might need to fix them a little bit. Especially this one, I'm gonna press a V and snap it to that point so that they match the exact same place. Because if I move this here, I'm gonna lose some of that stuff again. I might just like move this guy's down. There we go. Same with this one, like this point right here. I don't want to move that point. Or actually, that's like the outer point, so should be fine. Let's grab all of this. Keep it really straight, and then this one, just as straight as possible as we can. And I'm tweaking things a little bit more than I should, but just for cleanliness sake. Let's again go there, there, there. And again, just take a quick look at, in this case, at the border of the object. I just want to make sure that in general it keeps like the same width throughout. Like I don't want certain parts to be like bigger or smaller. Now we need to talk about how we're going to incorporate this whole pattern into the metal edge, right? And whenever you're seeing, or whenever you see this kind of patterns, you always need to ask yourself, how do we want the topology to flow, right? Because if we're going to be adding support edges later on, we want to make sure that the edges flow in a really nice way. So I'm going to grab my quadro again. And for instance, right here, I'm going to add a couple of edge loops. I'm going to move this one out of the way so that they're a little bit more uniform. And from here is where we're going to be creating our road, right? And it's pretty obvious that this road is just going to be flowing in this direction. And we want to make sure that this is, we try to keep consistent the same width. Some of you might be asking, well, why not extrude the edge, right, rather than place points? The problem with extruding the edge is that we're still gonna have to like twist it, and we're still gonna lose volume there. So I do believe this is one of those things that it's not only faster, it's also relatively more precise if we do it this way. There we go, and we finish right here. Now I don't need to loop this back because I know that when I do this number 3, this is gonna be smoothed out. But eventually this square right here will need some sort of like work on this area so that it smooths into a nice little like our circle. It will do it once we do the extrusion. The extrusion is going to help there, but if I need to, I'll show you a nice little trick there. Oh. Now on this side, same deal. So we already have this sort of like corner going from there, and we just finish the connection. And we're gonna again try to keep the width of this thing as consistent as possible. There we go. Now this is the tricky one because as you can see, we're actually starting with like a really broad connection right here. And then we go to like a relatively narrow connection on this side. So let's add the points right here. Let's scale them so they're completely straight. And I'm going to position them so they match where the insertion point is going to be. And you can see that we have 2 right here. So that means that we're also going to have 2 over here. Let's go to quadro. And this middle line, of course, it's going to be going towards the middle line. Let's start adding here the divisions. And that's one of the, I just started a new class this week at the university. The semester has just begun. And I'm teaching the first, it's not the first year, it's the first semester students. And we were going over the basics of 3D work and stuff. And I was explaining that when we talk about 3D objects, the more components you have, the more vertices, the more edge loops, the more in general components faces you have, the more detail you're going to be able to add to your object, right? So for instance, here's where things are going to get a little bit tricky because we have this very stretched effect. That's why I added an extra face right there to help with this whole transition on this area. Let's keep the width again clean. And here you always want to kind of like balance things out so that you don't get this weird pinches on your meshes. Let's kind of have them clean. You could try doing the relax button, but I don't like using it as much because as you can see right there, it does move things in a little bit of a weird manner. In this case, it's not that bad, so it might be useful. And there we go. So if we go to perspective view, let's turn this off. We're going to get this object right here, which is the main object. And if I do number 3, as you can see, it's going to be really, really smooth, which is not exactly what we want, right? Because there's a couple of hard edges that we have on our element. So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, we need to create the volume, right? And the best way to create volume is with extrusion. So Control E, I'm just going to push this up like this. It's going to give me the volume that I need. There's, of course, going to be a little bit of overlap. That's completely fine. Now, one thing that I'm seeing on the border of this thing is that it's actually not completely square. Let me open Paint real quick. So if we were to do like a cross section of this thing from the top, I don't expect the border to be like this. From what I can tell right here, it's more like this. So it's like straight, a little bit of a ramp, straight, a little bit of a ramp, and then straight. So this sort of like movement here, it's what I see there on the shadow, because you can see this blue line that's kind of like on the flat side of the inner part of the shield, and then there's a little bit of a ramp, and then we have the main object. So give me just 1 second. So what we're gonna do there's a couple of ways to do it. I do think probably the easiest one is just a bevel. So I'm just gonna grab this edge right here and this edge right here, and since we created this very nice and clean cut throughout, or edge loop throughout the border, it's going to be super easy to select. It's just a double click, right? So when we do the bevel, as you can see right here, I'm going to be able to create that little ramp that we're seeing. I'm going to increase the fraction, and it's roughly about there, I would say. Like that pretty much gives us the border that we want. Now, if you want your object to be slightly like bigger or smaller, you can just center the pivot point here and extrude this out, and it's going to give you like a thicker shield or a smaller shield, so stuff like that. Now, since we did a bevel right there, it might be a good idea to do a bevel on the inside of these things. Here, the selection is going to be a little bit more tricky, because as you can see, every time the edge loop collides with a point or an edge that doesn't flow naturally into the next edge, it's going to kind of like, it's just going to stop. It's going to wait for us to tell it how to continue the edge loop. So very important that we do it on both sides. Technically, we could just do it on one and then mirror at the end, but out of habit, I'm just selecting everything. Make sure things are selected. Always when you're beveling, always complete the loop. That's one of the easiest ways to avoid having end-ons, because end-ons can be tricky. So in order to avoid that, always complete the loop. Now that the loops are complete in all of the single holes, I'm just gonna bevel this thing right here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Some of you might be like, why not add some like divisions right here? You can if you want to. Just keep in mind that you might get like a slightly different result once you go into number 3 mode, which is this one right here. Cool. So we already have the shape. It's looking nice. It's looking like the way I want it. Now we need to add a couple of more edges to make sure that this thing looks like it's like made out of metal. Because when we press number 3 right now, which is the subdivision surface effect, we get this super like clay looking effect, which if you're doing like some sort of elf shield or something might be good. But in this case, we want this to be like really, really sharp. There's 2 ways to sharpen up corners whenever you're modeling something. The first one is, of course, the bevel, but the bevel will give it a little bit of a roundness, and the other one is just inserting edge loops. So I'm going to use my cut tool here. I'm going to insert 1 edge loop here, and 1 edge loop there, 1 edge loop here, and 1 edge loop there. I'm not going to do the back part so that you guys can see the difference. Look how nice the difference looks right there. Right, this is like really, really nice and tidy, right? And actually, I'm gonna go to the previous bevel that we did. This is one of the things I like about Maya. We do have the history, and sometimes you can move it. So we did this this bevel right here. So I'm gonna make the fraction a little bit smaller so we get like sharper edges. There we go. That's a little bit closer to what I want. The other thing I'm seeing is in the shield, there's a couple of areas where the corners are really sharp, right? Like in this area right here. That's another part where you definitely want to have some support edges. So when we smooth this out, we keep this very nice effect right there. Let's go over here. Let's do 1 and 2. Careful here. Here's where things are going to get a little bit tricky. Like right now, as you can see, that's a very pointy edge right on the shield. But if I were to add 1 here and 1 here, this new line that I added and goes all the way to this area might affect the way things look. In this case, it's not really affecting us because the connection was really clean. But just keep in mind that it could affect you. So we're going to add 1 more there. Oh, that's curious. That's not letting me. Why do we have a... Oh, yeah, of course. Because when we did this thing, it... Oh, see? Remember when I mentioned that the angles can be very tricky to do? I forgot to select this edge, and as you can see, now we have angles right there. Can we solve this? Yes, because on the front side, things are good. So what I'm going to do So I'm just gonna center the pivot point on this thing, shift a right click, and I'm gonna go mirror, and we're gonna mirror this on the object, which is gonna use the pivot point as the base, and it's gonna be -Z. And I'm gonna hit apply. So now we actually have a middle line or a symmetry line, and that whatever we had on the front is now on the back. So when we hit number 3, as you can see, things look better now. So let's go back here, and now we did have this guy right there and this guy right there. So that's going to give us a very nice sharp look right there. Let's do one right here and one right there. So it's going to keep things really, really sharp. Now, see this like really, really bad pinch that we're getting there? It's not really obvious on this mode, but the number 3 mode, it's quite obvious. So I'm going to add one more support line right there, which will help. But the way to really solve this will be to add one right here, which is going to keep it a little bit less intense, or which is one that we're also going to add one right here. When we add one right there and one right there, as you can see, the pitch is going to be gone because there's not as much pressure or what's the word, like the edges have a little bit more room to work with. Okay. The only problem by adding these two new edges that I added there is the fact that now this part right here is no longer as round as what we have right here. But I'm going to show you how to fix it in just a second. So another one is right here. We want to keep that corner really tight, and then we have this very nice curve. We don't want to modify that at all. There is one insertion point here, so we might add one right there, and I'm going to show you how to relax that one. Down here, there's going to be 1 and 2, and there's going to be another 1 and 2 over here, 1 and 2. I'm not sure if I've mentioned this before on YouTube. I know I've mentioned this on the Maya tutorials that I have recorded, which, by the way, I forgot to play to you the little commercial, guys. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, if this is something that's interesting to you, if you want to keep practicing Maya and if you want to keep learning about Maya, we released a very complete guide to Maya 2022 earlier this year, and you can check it out for free in Skillshare.
Hey guys, Abraham here. I just wanted to remind you guys that we upload all of our courses to Skillshare. Skillshare is this amazing site where you can access a ton of different content to learn, improve, and grow as an artist. We have all of our courses available to watch and learn from right now in Skillshare. You can check the description down here, and Skillshare is offering 1 free month trial to their premium membership. With this membership, you're going to be able to access all of our courses and watch and learn all of the amazing things that we cover with all of the softwares. So, what are you waiting for? Check Skillshare down here below.
There we go. I always forget to play the commercial at the beginning of the video, but yeah, that's it. So let's add a couple of more edge loops right here. We might need to add a couple of edge loops here as well to keep this sharp. And now when we press number 3, that's looking nice. And then there's no, like as you can see, there's no hard border on this upper one. It's very round. So that's pretty much it. As you can see, this is the result. Now, as you can see, there's a couple of weird points right here. For instance, I don't know what happened here. That's a really weird edge. To delete an edge, control and delete. Always control and delete to erase the points. I don't know what happened there. Maybe I used a knife tool or something. Let's go to front view now, to the front view, and let's fix this part right here, which is, I mentioned, is giving us this very weird effect. So the easiest way to fix this is by adding one edge loop right here at the center, and then going into vertex mode and moving these vertices to the side. The further apart vertices are from each other, the more the more relaxed they're gonna look. So even this one's right here, for instance, let's just select those and just like move them apart a little bit, and that's gonna help like round things up a little bit more. It might look really weird, really weird, because we're pretty much like separating the bevel that we created earlier, but this will make sure that things flow in a nicer way. So as you can see right there, that looks very round. And now that we have this, now it's going to be a little bit easier to pinpoint the thickness, right? Like the thickness variation. So I can see that this one's a little bit weird. So let's give a little bit more thickness here. One thing we might need to do is we might need to add one extra edge loop right there and help the curvature again, so that we keep the same sort of like length throughout the whole like shield part. And we might need one more right here. Again, to keep that part like really sharp. And that's it. Now, the next part that I like to do, especially with metallic objects when working in this sort of like subdivision level workflow, is I like to add a new material. And I'm gonna add, now I'm actually gonna add like a good like metal material. So I'm gonna go Arnold. I'm gonna do an AI standard surface. Let's delete the history. so that we get the material right here. I'm going to call this M metal. Metal. Oh, God. Metal. There we go. And we're going to turn the metalness all the way up. It's going to look black right now, which is horrible to work with. But one thing you can do is you can actually turn this little button right here, which is called the use default material. So you're not going to see the object right here on the viewport, but it's going to be present on the render. So it works especially well with glass, for instance, because glass becomes like transparent and you can't even see the object. So now, again, one of the cool things about this is that we're going to be able to do some renders and see where things are like, especially if we get like some sort of like weird pinches and stuff. Now that I think of it, I'm actually going to bring this back. So I'm going to bring the materials back, but I'm going to remove the metalness for now. There we go. Actually, I'm going to use the metal for the render, but I'm going to assign one of the Beveling materials that we had before, because Beveling is, the Beveling material is very nosy. It immediately will tell you when something is not like, well, you're immediately going to see pinches and stuff when you're using the Beveling material. So for instance, right here, I can see how it kind of breaks. And I know that it's because these things are really close together, like this two right here. So again, I'm going to grab this guys right here. Just going to move them a little bit to give them a little bit more breathing room. I also don't love this pinch right here. So I'm going to move this thing like further down. And if we get like a softer effect right there, I think it's better, because especially this guys right here, they seem to be becoming a little bit too thin for the rest of the element. So make sure to check how everything looks in context, because that's going to be really important. Now we need to add the wooden planks. That's going to be the last part of this whole thing. Oh, I was scared. I thought I was recording without audio because I didn't see the little bar on my OBS mode. No, it's working. So for the planks, I'm going to show you a very simple way. Remember this one that we had right here? Well, we can actually use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of the vertices from this guy. I'm just going to get them inside of the wooden or the metal frame that we created. As close as possible. All of them are fine. There we go. Cool. And then I'm gonna grab this face and delete all of the other ones. So we only have this like flat face right here. I'm gonna go to the front view. And with my knife tool, I'm just gonna cut one straight line down where the plank is. And another one right here. There we go. So I know that those are the divisions of the planks that we need. I'm going to grab this edge and this edge. I'm going to bevel them. Small fraction. And I'm going to grab those little like things that we had, and I'm just going to delete them. So there we go. We have the planks. Now, how can we clean these planks, right? Because they are made out of n-gons, and we don't like n-gons. N-gons are not really helpful for us. Well, we can use the cut tool. And for instance, if we go to this vertice and we go up here, this is no longer an n-gon. If we go from here to there, that's no longer an n-gon, and then we go from here to there. That's no longer an n-gon, and from here to here. We have an extra one right there. I might just like cut to the side, and that's pretty much it. So as you can see now, we don't have any extra vertices. Everything is just like a nice little element. And what we can do is we can just grab the object itself, Control E, and extrude it to give it the thickness of the wood planks that we might need. Let's make it a little bit bigger. I'm gonna grab this guys right here, push it to the middle of the object like that, and again, let's just send to the pivot point and play around with the thickness of how much wood we want to show. I think something like that is fine. We do want this to be like a resistant wood. Let's try to center this to a middle vertice, so we have the same amount of like wood on both sides. There we go. And as you can see, we can kind of see the bevel of the woods, right? So I'm just gonna go to the edges. Yep, that edge and the back edge, and then this edge, this edge, this edge, this edge, this edge, this edge, this edge. That's it, and this edge. Make sure we're selecting all of the proper edges. Like that. These two. I think that's it. We're missing those two, and those two. So as you can see, all of the edges that you might see, we want to bevel them. There we go. We bevel. Small bevel. I'm going to give this 2 divisions. It's fine. And of course, when we smooth this out, it looks horrible, right? So we need to add support edges. So we're going to add 1 on the top, a couple on the side, like this, 1 on the top, and a couple on the side, like this, 1 on the top, and a couple on the side. It's a really stretched out texture, but don't worry, it's gonna work just fine. So there we go. Now, of course, as you can see, a couple of this need to be tweaked. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say mesh separate, and since they are all different islands of faces, it's gonna be a little bit easier to work with. So for instance, this one right here, well, let's grab all 3 of them and center the pivot point. Center. So this one, let's scale it a little bit more because we want to make sure it touches the other side. Like we don't want to see through the object. We want to see that line right there. And the important thing is we don't want to see this thing going outside of the border. So see that point right there? That's a little bit too close to the border. So let's just move it in. There we go. Same for this one. What we can do is just grab these vertices, for instance. Just push them a little bit in, and then this vertices right here. Push them a little bit in, even if there's a little bit of overlap, that's fine. And you can see that here we need a couple more divisions. So I'm gonna add 1 more division here so that we can grab this vertices and get them inside of the curvature. And that way we don't see the rest of the elements. And that's it. That's pretty much it. As you can see, now we have the upper part of the element ready to go. The last thing we are missing is this thing right here. So give me just 1 second. So for these little things, it's a little bit weird because on this side, I can see the shadow as kind of like, well, not the shadow, the highlight. It's very round, right? And on this side, it could be this like watermark thing that I added, but it looks beveled, right? So this is where sometimes if you don't have the artist close to you or you can't really go and ask him, you need to make some artistic choices, artistic decisions, right? In my opinion, since everything is very like beveled and chiseled, I think it might be better to keep it beveled and chiseled rather than round like what we have right here. So I'm gonna go with a cube in this case. Let's bring the cube to the position. Oh my god, why did I move this? Very weird. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Grabbing everything at the same time, of course, to make sure that we have that. There we go. And then this thing, it's roughly about there. As you can see, it's in between the bevel area right here and the first like bent. So it's probably gonna be around there. I'm gonna use a V and snap it to the center. There has to be. Remember we had. I'm gonna use wireframe unshaded here, and we have that line right there, which is our center. Just make it smaller. Grab this thing, bring it lower just a little bit. And the bevel areas are this ones right here. So I'm gonna bevel. Doesn't seem to be as wide, so I'm gonna make it slightly smaller, slightly bigger. Something like this looks like. Now we have n-gons, and we mentioned this, n-gons are usually not that good, so I'm gonna delete those n-gons. And then I am gonna just grab the whole object and extrude. I'm gonna scale it in, but I'm only gonna scale it like this and just scale it out so that we keep the same sort of thickness. Probably gonna have to move this thing down as well. And as you can see, we get this sort of shape. Let's push this in. Perfect. Mesh display, reverse, so that we get the other side like that. And I'm gonna bevel all of these lines. As you can see, all of those lines complete a circle, so or well, not a circle. They complete like a path. So when we bevel, we're not gonna have any issues. 2 or small fraction, 2 segments. There we go. And now, of course, we need to add our support edges. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm gonna grab this whole thing, center the pivot point, and mirror it on Z on the object option, so that whatever we did here on the edge loops gets repeated on the backside. And when we press number 3, as you can see, that looks quite nice. We might need to add one extra loop right there. Perfect. So now, as you can see, let's just assign the same material to this thing. I'm gonna assign the metal. There we go. Let's get rid of wireframe unshaded, and that's it. That's how we would create this sort of effect right there. This one seems a little bit too much there. Let's bring it back. I do want to see a little bit of the bevel effect right there, so I want that to be a little bit more obvious. Same for this one. Just push it out a little bit so we can see the shadow, the border there. It's gonna be important. Later on, we're gonna bend the shield, but I'm gonna wait until the very end to do that, so that it's easier to work with these parts right here. Let's go to the top view. Let's get them right here, and I can immediately tell that based on our original concept, it's a little bit thin. So I'm actually gonna combine everything into a single object. That way we can expand this or make it like thicker. And there we go. And this one, I'm gonna mirror to the X, a world, a negative X. Hit apply, and there we go. So that's it, guys. That's the technique that you can use to create this very nice looking patterns. I actually have my render setup right here, which is the one that I used for the last thumbnail. I'm gonna show you real quick. It's a very basic setup. It's just an HDRI. I have a couple of lights to give it a little bit more punch, and I have my camera right here. So I'm just gonna say panels, look through selected. Let's just find a good position right here. And the point is that at the end of the series, you're going to see each thumbnail getting better and better. Normally, I change thumbnails around. I want to try this one. Let's see how it looks. And let's just get a bit. Well, let's save. Haven't saved. And let's just hit Arnold and render. I do have my denoiser turned on so that we get to see these things. And as you can see, look at that. Not freaking bad, right? Not freaking bad. So yeah, that's it for this one, guys. I'm gonna probably do the bottom part off camera just to, again, save a little bit of time. But it's gonna be the exact same process that I did with this one. I'm gonna trace the border, create the inner patterns, extrude, get the other elements around, and that's gonna give us the sort of same result that we have up here. So let me know what you think. Thank you very much for this video. You guys know that your support is always welcome. Don't forget to comment, because we are going to be selecting random videos at the end of the month, and then we're going to be selecting a random comment as well to thank you guys for supporting us. And that person, whoever wins, there's going to be 3 winners. They're going to get a free course of their choice. So make sure to leave us a like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you back tomorrow for a new video. Bye-bye.